Hello, I'm Eliza Kaine with Gaia Goddess, and we're going to talk about sacred sexuality today. And so, when I refer to sacred, to just be clear on that, what I mean is great reverence and great respect. It's really that sense of honoring, truly honoring. And when I refer to sexuality, while that can involve intimacy with another, our sexuality really is a core essence of who we are. It's our life force, it's our vitality, it's that creative expression and that magnetism. It's this rooted sense of who we are. And in today's world, I have just observed and noticed, and I myself have struggled. I think there's a lot of struggle around having a healthy sense of sexuality and really bringing the sacredness back to it. There's a lot of toxicity in this world around it because a lot of it's been sexualized and there's a lot of trauma and abuse. And so I just really want to honor that and acknowledge that and let you know that wherever you are at in this journey, this is a really sacred process of returning to this really special part of who we are. And as I mentioned, sexuality, it's that vitality and life force. And so much of that is activated through the breath work. And for me, breathwork has been an incredible tool in supporting me in reawakening this part of myself and really learning to embrace and love that this is, such a beautiful part of who I am. That sensual expression, just the way that you can relate and really engage with other people. So breathwork is very nurturing to this process because I say this all the time, but that's because it's just so true. Your breath is the most intimate relationship you will ever have. It is what dives into the deepest recesses within and helps you really understand and create that inner awareness, which is what creates intimacy, that knowing yourself inside and out. So as you begin to engage with this practice and it pulls you further into your body, you start to really reawaken that sexuality. And a big part of it is pulling you into the body. So when I first began breathwork meditation, pretty soon after I began my daily practice, I started having this incredible experience where after moving through a little bit of the discomfort that would happen as I was activating that tension and tightness, after moving through that, oftentimes a song would come on and it would just touch a part of my heart and it would crack open and I would be off to this place of nirvana. And it was so blissful and so wonderful. And I loved this. This was such a wonderful part of my practice. But then one day I was at a retreat and my teacher, David, he's a very prominent teacher of mine. He's taught me a lot around, it's who I've learned the breath work from. Anyways, he came over and he took his thumbs and he dug them into the arches of my feet. And this blissful nirvana state I was in, I got brought right back down to earth. And I was thinking, like, what are you doing? Like, why are you doing that? I was off in like the cosmos in this blissful state. And I kind of had to laugh to myself after getting annoyed because I had been doing the work with him long enough that I really trusted. I was like, there's a reason. So I kept breathing. And as I kept breathing, I started to notice that my body was vibrating and tingling in an intensity that I had never done before. And when that was happening, David then guided us to actually pull our souls, invite our souls into our body. And as he was doing this, I started to feel like this really intense sensation, almost like I was being suction cupped to the earth below me. And with this intense sensation of feeling kind of rooted into the earth and my body really vibrating, so I had this really strong awareness of my own energy, I then began to feel the earth's energy below me. And I began to feel that energy dancing and mingling with my own in this really beautiful, synergistic, nourishing sense. of aliveness. I was like, this is such a cool experience to feel my energy so potently and the earth's energy as well, and the dancing together. And that really began this process where I started to learn the importance of having presence in my body. And that the more rooted I became here and now, as opposed to checking off, even though I was checking out into this blissful space, the more rooted I became in my body, the more aware I became of the energies around me. And the more I could choose to really embrace and have fun and dance with these energies. And when I would breathe them, what would happen is that I was tuning myself. There was this sensitivity that was awakening within me. And I would almost feel as though like each of my cells were being made love to. There was this really beautiful quality and this nourishment that was happening from being present in my body. Now, it's not always easy for people to be present in their bodies, and it has been a journey for me to continue to come back into my body, because oftentimes we have experiences or emotions that we haven't yet processed that disconnect us from our body, or other times in our sensitivity, we can feel things that we might not want to feel. And so another little story I want to share before I kind of tie this all together around your sexuality and that sacredness there is that when I also, towards the beginning of when I was doing this practice, I had a session with David. And he shared this insight with me where he said, you have to be really careful not to pick up the sexual traumas or issues of other women. So while I didn't exactly know what this meant, and what he shared stuck in the back of my mind, and it carried through with me as I dove further and further into my own breathwork practice. Now, one of the things that I was really trying to heal at that time was the pain I was experiencing during my menstrual cycle. It was really debilitating. I would become so drained from the pain that my face would literally get white. It was like all the blood would drain out of me. And it felt like I would have these like stabbing sensations in both my abdomen and in my lower back. And while a lot of this was physiological, the root of it was really energetic. And I remember one time being in so much pain, and I was trying to lay down, and I was like, oh, if I can just get a little bit of breath into there, like maybe that could help. But just the idea of even breathing down into my lower abdomen, into my pelvis area, like it was just too painful. So I was kind of lying there curled up. And I remember hearing this voice and this guidance. And it was saying, you don't have to process the pain of the world. You don't have to process the pain and trauma of all the women in the world. And it just kind of clicked into place what David had said to me so not too long ago about not having to process these other traumas. I was realizing that, this part of our body, this energy center, our womb space for women, this is where we can exchange so much energy with people. And we don't always realize that oftentimes we're picking up things that aren't ours. And then through our cycle, our body is actually trying to process that. And when it's more than just our own, it can be so intensely painful on the process, on our bodies. It can just feel like it's so much. And so I just started, in that moment, I started kind of whispering to my body, you don't have to process the pain of the world. I don't have to process the pain of the world. And it was so interesting because I literally felt my body almost like sigh with relief. It was just like, thank you. Like, this is too much. I can't handle this. And so that was just a really important lesson for me in learning of how we become so much more sensitive with the breath work. And we are all just these sensitive, empathetic beings. And it's really important for us to learn not to try and process a lot of what's not ours. We really want to let that go and to make sure we have that healthy sense of self, especially in this center, in this womb area for us women. You want to really be clear of what's your energy and what's not your energy. And that way your body can kind of just soften and it can become more receptive to all the beauty and the wonder in this world. So that being present in your body and really learning not to process other people's energy. These are really key things that the breathwork does as it kind of heightens the sensitivity. And these are all going to support you in your sexuality. And now they're also really going to support you when you start to have intimate relationships with another person. And hopefully they're going to really encourage you to bring more discernment to those relationships. Because, I think about my experience with the earth and how intimately our energies were dancing together. And the earth is such a beautiful, loving consciousness. And while, I really believe humans, the root of humans, their heart, it's love. There's so much love in the human experience. There's also a lot of pain and trauma. And so you want to be mindful of who you're engaging with. Because, when you're in that intimacy, the exchange of energy, it's really potent, and you could really pick up things that aren't yours, and you want to just be aware of it. And you also want to be aware of where might you be struggling with holding that discernment and who you're going to be intimate with based on maybe some abandonment issues or also based on your self-worth. Self-worth is a huge thing where we can kind of lower our standards with who we're going to be intimate with. And abandonment is actually another really big piece of this equation. When you have an abandonment wound, it's really common to attract these relationships that might be very high chemistry, but they also have that essence of abandonment. So it can create this like angst and stress within you that isn't really supportive to you feeling your well-being. Now, those things are kind of deeper topics I'm not going to get into, but I really just want to encourage you with the breath work to really let yourself activate that sense of deep love within. Because when two people come together from that place, the experience, I believe, becomes sacred at a whole new level. A final little story I'll share around this is that after a few years of doing the breath work, I started to go off into these really out there places. And it was amazing. And it was so fascinating and brilliant. But I also started to have this like little seed of doubt of like, if I keep going down this path and I keep getting out there like this, is there going to be a partner for me? Is there going to be somebody that can match this? Like, am I going to be able to find another that I can really, really find this sacred union with? And I was hiking when I was having this thought. And as I was hiking, I heard this screech in the sky. And guess what? The red-tailed hawk, who was a dear ally of mine, was circling up above. And that red-tailed hawk was with a partner. It was two red-tailed hawks. And they were dancing and weaving together in this beautiful, beautiful way that really amazed me. And I was like, okay, if the red-tailed hawk has a partner, then I'm going to be fine. All is well. But then the funny part was that in the distance, I saw a third red-tailed hawk. And I was like, well, what is that third red-tailed hawk? I don't want a love triangle. Like, this better not be a love triangle. Well, long story short, a few years later, I realized that the third hawk, what I was being shown by seeing the three red-tailed hawks, is that when two people who are really rooted in who they are, who are really full of love, when they come together in sacred union, that love actually creates a third entity, its own essence of love. And that, I believe, really is this beautiful energy that is here to heal this world in the most incredible way. So I encourage you to just keep going inward and embracing the beauty and gift of your life, and keep trusting that as you show up and you nourish that relationship with yourself, it's going to nourish all areas of your life, and it's going to activate that life force and vitality that really brings that joyful experience of being alive in all sorts of ways. Thanks so much for listening.